Welcome to this talk on computer vision and deep learning for advanced medical imaging and analysis. My name is Pranav Durai. I am a senior computer vision engineer at OpenCV, and I'm also a research fellow at Stanford University School of Medicine. I'm actually working with Dr. Frezghi in his lab on a very interesting project, which I will also talk about in some of my upcoming slides. Right. Let me quickly talk a little bit about the agenda that we have today, right? We'll first start with an introduction to deep learning and how it is shaping the future in medical imaging, right? We'll also explore a few advanced models for medical image analysis, right? And we'll also explore a few data augmentation and handling imbalanced data sets techniques for large computer vision and deep learning projects, right? And we'll end this session with, kind of discussing about the challenges and future directions for the specific topic. And in the end, we can also have a quick Q&A session if time permits. All right. So what am I working on right now? So specifically in this project with Dr. Frezghi, we're actually building a system using 3D computer vision techniques, specifically for organ segmentation on PET-CT images, right? So initially, the plan was to do it just for organs, but in the future, we might also, introduce some kind of cancer cell segmentation within the initial organ segmentation component itself, right? And the software that we are building right now is called BIRAT, and it is a sophisticated software for image registry, specifically for medical images during preclinical studies, right? So let's have a quick introduction to deep learning in medical imaging, right? And I think Dr. Frezghi did a great job with laying the foundation for how images are formed and how pixels come together and how images are digitally represented, right? And the technology which enables computers to see and perceive the real world like how we humans do is called computer vision, right? And computer vision natively has a lot of applications in medical imaging, right? And before we dive deeper into the actual applications, it's important to understand what computer vision can do, and then we'll try to apply those techniques in medical images for specific use cases and try to understand how to, map these techniques. All right, so let's have a quick introduction to deep learning in medical imaging. So on the left, you can see is the first technique in computer vision, and it is called image classification, right? As the name suggests, I give an input image to a deep learning model, and it has to, kind of classify what that image is, right? Or what is present in that image. Like for example, you have an image of a cat over here, and you also have an image of a dog. So which means if I, forward pass this image into this algorithm over here, it should say that, hey, this is a cat, right? And on the other hand, if I pass this image, the image of a dog, it should say that, hey, this is a dog, right? And how do you, train these algorithms, right? So you train these algorithms with a data set of multiple images of each class. And a class is multiple images of a specific component over here. So for example, cat is a class and dog is another class, right? And for each class, you have multiple images so that the algorithm learns to, identify multiple variations in the image, right? So this is image classification, and it's one of the most, basic techniques in computer vision, right? The second technique that I'd like to talk about is object detection, right? So now you have the image, but I want to identify where exactly an object is present in that specific image, right? So how do you do that? And you do that using object detection, right? So in this case over here, you can see that there is a real-time video of streets in New York City, right? And you can see that there are multiple objects moving within this video that we have over here, right? So you can see a car is moving, the people moving over here. There is a traffic sign traffic light over here, right? And the algorithm is able to detect and classify all of these objects in real time, right? So you have two components over here. The first component is to detect the object, and the second component is to classify what object that it is, right? So that is what is happening over here in object detection, right? The third technique over here is called image segmentation, and I think Dr. Frezghi also talked a little bit about image segmentation specifically for medical images. But this is actually a real-time feed of an autonomous car trying to, move through a highway over here, right? And you can see that there are multiple components in this specific image, right? So there's a road, right? You have buildings on the right, if you can see over here. You can also have trees, right? You have a little bit of grass over here, right? And you might also have pedestrians and people riding a bike, right? So all of these components are different classes in an image segmentation problem, right? And in this case, instead of trying to detect where exactly that class is present, we are trying to do pixel-wise classification, right? So given an input image, there are m cross n pixels in that image, right? And for each pixel in that image, you would have to assign a label to that pixel, right? And try to map where which class that pixel belongs to, right? So for example, over here you have the road, and there are a lot of pixels in the road, right? So you map that to the component over here, the class over here, which says road, right? So that is exactly what you're doing over here, because you're doing pixel-wise classification, right? And this is more, accurate than object detection, specifically for medical imaging, right? And one of the last applications over here of computer vision is key point estimation, right? So just imagine that you take a gym membership and you try to, lift some weights. But the problem is the posture is very important, because you might, damage your muscles if you don't maintain a good posture, right? But getting a trainer is pretty costly, right? Getting a personal trainer is pretty costly. So what if your mobile device can, monitor your posture and try to tell you how to lift weights, and it could, effectively correct your posture, right? So that is a great application. And that is exactly what key point estimation does, is that it detects few preset key points in a given input image. For example, over here, we are detecting key points on a human being, right? So every movable joint in the person is a key point, right? So for example, over here, you have the legs, the ankle, yeah, this moves, the knee, this moves as well, right? The arms and the elbow, and also the wrist area, right? So all of that are movable joints, and all of those joints are key points, right? And you can use this to train a key point estimation model to estimate the best posture for that specific exercise, right? All right, so these are some of the few techniques that you can use using computer vision, right? And now let's try to understand where exactly some of these techniques can be applied with change in imaging modality specifically for medical imaging, right? So this is CT, right? And I'm pretty sure some of the previous speakers would have touched base on all of these, modalities, right? And on the left, you can see there is a CT of the skull, right? The human skull. And also on the right, there is a CT, scan image of the abdomen, right? So what are the different kind of, computer vision techniques you can apply for this modality, right? The first thing is that you can do accurate organ segmentation on CT, right? And the second thing is that you can also do tumor detection using CT. And the third thing is that you can also do disease classification using some kind of, classification algorithms, right? But the thing is, CT comes with a little bit of, pros and cons. The pros is definitely, high spatial resolution, right? It allows for detailed visualization of the internal structures and tissues within the body, right? And it really helps with identifying small lesions, tumors, or even some of the abnormalities which can be missed by other imaging modalities, right? And the second thing is that it also has fast scanning speeds, right? But CT also comes with a little bit of cons, and the first thing that comes to my mind is ionizing radio exposure, right? Radiation exposure. So if you have prolonged exposure of radiation on human beings, then that could cause some kind of problems, and it could also potentially increase the risk of cancer, right? And it also has limited soft tissue contrast, right? So these are some of the pros and cons for this specific modality. Right? The second modality over here is MRI, right? And you have an MRI of the human head and also the cardiac MRI on the right, right? And so what are the applications that you can do over here specifically in MRI? And the first thing over here is image denoising, right? Some of these images are bad in resolution. It varies from imaging equipment, right? So each imaging equipment comes with some kind of resolution in which they can capture all of these images, right? And if they are not state of the art, then the imaging quality would be less, right? And that introduces a lot of noise in the images, right? And you could not directly use all of these images and try to get some kind of analysis out of it, right? So you have to implement some kind of pre-processing technique which would remove all of these noise artifacts on the image, and then you use that image for analysis and for further experimentation, right? So the first thing that you can do is apply some kind of image denoising, remove the noise, and then pass it through other algorithms that you would have to get the best possible result, right? And the second thing over here is that you can also do tissue level segmentation using state of the art segmentation models, right? And the third modality over here is X-ray and radiography, right? So you have the X-ray of wrist as well as the knee over here, right? And what are the applications of computer vision in this specific modality, right? So the first thing that we could do is you could do a little bit of bone fracture detection, right? And this could be done using object detection models, which we spoke about in one of the previous slides, right? So you could train a object detection model with a region of interest, which would be the crack in the bone, and you would have multiple samples of these images with varying crack sizes, with different bone structures and different types of bones, and a lot of variations, right? And this would make the object detection model to be robust, to be able to identify multiple types of bone fractures and multiple types of variations as well, right? So this is an interesting application, right? And the second one is pneumonia diagnosis, right? And what is that, right? So you can see that you have 4 different samples over here, and this is the normal sample over here, right? And this sample is actually infected with bacterial pneumonia, right? And this sample over here, the third sample, sample C, is affected with viral pneumonia. And the last sample over here, sample D, is infected with COVID-19, right? You can see that there is a change in how the image looks like as well. And this can be used to perform some kind of pattern recognition on these images. And you could identify or classify all of these images based on the type of pneumonia the person has, right? And you would use an image classification model for this specific use case, all right? So the pros is that it's quick for initial screening, right? And the con is that it has very limited, depth perception in some cases, all right? And the next modality that we have over here is ultrasound, right? You have an ultrasound of the female human womb, right? And also an ultrasound of the valves of the human heart as well, right? And in this case, the application over here is abnormality detection, right? So what is that? So in this case, I have an example of abnormality detection over here. And this is specifically for benign versus malignant cervical lymph nodes, right? You can see that if I take the region of interest over here and extract it out, right? So this is the entire region of interest, right? And on the other hand, in scan C over here, I can take out this complete region of interest over here, right? And this becomes a group of pixels, right? And it only makes sense to implement a image segmentation model over here to segment out the areas of interest over here and try to classify whether it's benign or malignant, right? So the pros is that it's non-invasive and it's real time, right? And the con over here is it's dependent on the operator who is trying to do all of these scans, right? And if he's not skilled or experienced enough, then the scans would not look, they would not have really good clarity, right? So this is for ultrasound, right? And the last thing over here is, histopathology, right? And histopathology is really good for specifically for cancer, right? Uh, Trying to detect different types of cancer, trying to grade them based on the stages of cancer. And also you can try to understand the prognosis of the cancer cells in the human body, right? So on the left, you have an image over here of the thymic cyst, and also in this case, the splenic lymphoid infiltrate, right? So in this case, you could do some kind of detection algorithm over here because you're trying to detect these objects from a given input image, right? And the thymic cyst over here, you can also do multiple types of object detection, and you can also count the number of cysts present in that specific image. All right. So what are the applications? Like I spoke about previously, you can do detection, you can also grade them, and you can also try to understand the prognosis of these cells over a period of time. And this is very helpful because histopathology is actually considered as the gold standard for diagnosing, multiple diseases and specifically cancer, right? So it could help with a lot of problems, right? Specifically for cellular abnormalities, tissue architecture and other microscopic features which are indicative of multiple diseases as well, right? But the con is that it is an invasive procedure, right? So you need to do some kind of biopsy or surgery to get some of a sample of the tissue and then try to perform some kind of imaging on it, right? So this actually could cause, or it has increased risks, specifically bleeding and infection. And the second thing is, the sampling bias, right? So what if I perform a surgical procedure and, take a sample which has, lesser number of these cancer cells, then that would become a problem, right? So that introduces some kind of sampling bias within the problem as well, right? So these are some of the modalities and what are the different applications that you could do using computer vision and deep learning, right? And next, I'd like to move on to recent some of the recent advancements and breakthroughs that the industry has been seeing so far in terms of deep learning models for computer vision, right? And the first thing over here is that you have convolution neural networks, and all of these models became famous in let's say 2016, right? They were at its peak with the introduction of frameworks like TensorFlow and Keras, right? You could easily build up CNN models from scratch and use them for different use cases, right? And this is very similar to the convolution operation, which Dr. Frezghi briefly showed. It does the same thing because it performs convolution operation in like a sliding window approach, right? You can see over here that it moves um, over here, right? It moves across the image with some kind of stride, right? Stride is the length or the movement of that specific convolution operation, right? And you can see that there is a new image getting formed over here as well. So this is convolution neural networks, right? And the second model over here is are recurrent neural networks, which are more useful in NLP or language-based tasks, right? And recently, we also have seen the breakthrough with transformers, right? Fun fact, ChatGPT uses transformers, right, to predict the next word in a given word sequence or in a sentence, right? And there is a specific version of transformers, specifically called vision transformer, which uses the same architecture on images, right? And hence the name vision transformer, right? So these are some of the high performance models that the industry has been using for various computer vision and language based problems, right? And some of these models they require millions of images for training them and to make them robust, right? But the problem is getting large data sets is not that easy, right? So one thing is your research facility might not have the necessary compute capabilities to process that kind of a data set, right? The second thing is your data acquisition team itself was not able to acquire large amounts of data to uh, build your data set, right? And the third thing is if you're getting data from a third-party source and the data is limited and you have to work only with that limited data, but still build a robust model, that becomes a problem, right? So these are three different problems that you can have, right? But there are some techniques which you could use to, kind of navigate through this problem, right? And this specific technique is called model fine-tuning, right? So which means you can already, take a pre-trained model, which was, pre-trained on millions of images for that specific use case. And then you fine-tune that model specifically for your use case, right? So you have a custom data set, which is the data set that you have in your research study, right? And you take a pre-trained model, right? And you fine-tune that pre-trained model on your custom data set, which means that model is now capable of understanding your kind of data and the variance and distribution that your data set has and your image, the quality and the features of your image, right? And this becomes a great thing because finally you get a custom fine-tuned model which works really well on your custom data set. And that is what you want as well, right? You want a model that performs really great on your or for your specific use case. So this is model fine-tuning. The second thing over here is that you could also do some kind of synthetic data generation, right? So let's say that you have, a very large, a very small real data set, which means the sample data set that you have, which has lesser number of samples, right? You can use that and train a GAN, right? So GAN stands for Generative Adversarial Neural Networks, right? And they are mostly used to generate images from scratch, right? And you could use a an image generator component over here, which has random noise as well as a starting point, right? And for each iteration, you have an iterative process over here, right? The GAN tries to, beat the real image with its specific generated image. And in the end, it could also, identify a fake versus a real image as well, right? So this is actually an iterative process, right? And I would suggest that you explore more on GANs and also the transformer-based image generation models, because I think the next 5 to 10 years in computer vision and deep learning would be dominated by transformers specifically for image generation, right? So you have over here is a high resolution image, right? And there are multiple, implementations of these image generation models, right? So you have a bicubic method over here. You also have an SR GAN, right? SR stands for super resolution GAN, right? So you can see that already SR GAN is better than bicubic, right? You can see some kind of pixelations over here, right? But SR GAN can, it looks more natural, right? And you also have this implementation C over here, which was proposed in this specific paper over here. You might take a screenshot over here so that you could also explore this paper more in detail, right? The paper is named "A New Generative Adversarial Neural Network for Medical Images Super Resolution." All right. And this is, of course, the ground truth, and the author's implementation was very close to the ground truth, right? So this is crazy, right? All right. So I'd like to talk a little bit about advanced models, specifically for medical image analysis. So which means models which were built specifically for medical image analysis, right? Deep learning models. All right, so the first model that I'd like to talk about is called UNIT. It's called UNIT because of its architecture, right? The shape itself looks, the shape of this specific architecture looks like a U, right? And it was built specifically for biomedical image segmentation, right? And on the right, you can see that this specific model was used to perform inference on chest CT, right? You can see that it's performing segmentation in real time as you pass by multiple slices of CT scans, right? So this is a very great implementation specifically for medical imaging, right? And there are some techniques which UNIT uses, and I'd like to talk about three techniques that it has, which would help it to excel in medical segmentation problems, right? And the first thing is overlap tile strategy, right? So the problem is medical images are really large, right? Even in terms of size and in terms of resolution as well. In fact, some of the computational pathology slides are close to 100K by 100K resolution, right? For a comparison, your HD TV at home is 1920 by 1080, right? So just imagine how big the images are, right? But you could not build a very large model which could directly take a large input image and perform some kind of segmentation on it, right? So in this case, the authors, they used a overlap tile strategy, which means it uses some kind of a sliding window based approach to try to learn the entire image and segment multiple components within that specific image, right? So this is overlap tile strategy technique which they used, right? And the second thing is they did some kind of data augmentation specifically by applying elastic deformations, right? So on the left over here, figure A, it actually shows an original image, and figure B shows a deformed image. So why would you do that? The thing is, cells do not have a uniform size, shape, or pattern, right? They can be in multiple ways. They have a lot of variations, right? But if your data set is not indicative of that variation, then your model will not be able to generalize across multiple use cases or multiple variations, right? So in this case, you would naturally introduce these instances in your data set using some kind of deformations so that your model is able to generalize better across different variations, right? So this is elastic deformation. And the third problem over here is that some of these cells, right, they overlap, right? They kind of overlap like sheets of paper on top of each other, right? So how would you kind of segment out a cell which is present underneath another cell, right, and vice versa? So how do you do that, right? So UNIT naturally handles that using all of these techniques. And this is the original image, right? And you also have a ground truth image over here, and you also have the final segmented result from the UNIT model, which could also identify overlaps of these cells, right? The only con that UNIT has is that there's a little bit of limited contextual information, right? Specifically in trying to capture long-range contextual information, right? So even if there is a lot of clutter or in the background in the image, then UNIT tends to kind of confuse itself with other ROIs. So that is the problem I see with UNIT, right? The second model over here is called DeepLab, right? And DeepLab is specifically built using semantic image segmentation with deep convolution nets. And it also uses this new type of convolution called Atris convolution, and it also has this technique called fully connected CRFs, right? So this is the architecture over here, and in real time you can see deep lab getting applied on these images, on these image slices for 3D brain tumor segmentation, right? So this is an example of deep labs model of output. An Atris convolution over here has two different types over here, right? So one is for sparse feature extraction, right? So features which are kind of spread across the multiple multiple regions of the image, and there are lesser number, right? And the bottom row over here kind of shows the dense feature extraction in the same image, right? So features which are kind of held close together, right? So in this case, this type of convolution would, capture both these kinds of, feature distribution in a given input image, right? So this is pretty great. And you also have, CRFs, which could, for each CRF, iteration over here, you can see that the mask or the segmentation mask gets more accurate, right? So over here, and you also have CRF iteration 1. It's kind of, has jagged edges and it's kind of rough, right? But in iteration 2, you can see that it's better than the previous iteration, right? And in the final iteration over here, you have a very good, predicted mask of that specific class, right? So what are the pros? Multi-scale contextual information, right? And the con is that it's a little bit, computationally intensive. So which means if you don't have, NVIDIA GPUs specifically to accelerate all of these deep learning tasks, then it could be a hassle, right? And this is one of the most recent advancements, which means that this model uses a transformer-based architecture, which I previously spoke about, right? And the model is called SegFarmer, and it is from NVIDIA, right? The company that manufactures all of these GPUs as well, right? And this works pretty great specifically for semantic segmentation tasks, right? So this actually, introduces something called a effective receptive field, which means the whole image is, forward passed through the image instead of, performing a sliding window based convolution, right? And you can see that over here that there are two models which have been compared, right? So you have SegFarmer over here, and you also have DeepLab v3. You can already see that how the ERF method is able to get a good spatial resolution over here compared to the DeepLab v3 plus model, right? So in this case, it does have global context modeling, right? Which means if there are features which are present in different regions of the same input image, the transformer model would still be able to actively relate these two ROIs and say that, hey, these are related, right? So that kind of global contextual information is possible, right? And you can model that as well. And the last thing is that, of course, this is a large model, and it's more complex than the traditional CNN-based models. So, which means you need multiple nodes of multiple NVIDIA GPUs to accelerate SegFarmer, right? So it is computationally intensive, right? So let's talk a little bit about data augmentation techniques and handling imbalanced data sets. So imbalance actually means that, let's say for class A, you have a lot of samples, and for class B, you have lesser number of samples. So in this case, it would not work out, right? So how would you handle that kind of problems, right? So let's quickly have a look at that and move forward. So in augmentation specifically, you have different types of augmentations, right? So this is the original image, and you can see that you perform some kind of translation over here, right? You include some kind of padding as well. And you can also do rotations, right? Based on some angle theta. And you can also flip these images vertically or horizontally to increase some kind of variation in your data set, which means you can naturally increase the number of samples for each image, right? And you can also do, generative model-based augmentation techniques, right? So in this case, you can use this model called ControlNet to, generate all of these medical images from scratch. So here on the left is a real image, and on the right is a generated image of the human brain, right? And these are some, strategies and strategies to, mitigate imbalance in terms of data distribution, right? So you can do some kind of class weighing, right? You can also do a synthetic minority oversampling technique, right? And the last thing is you can also do ensemble methods, which means you can, daisy chain multiple models, and that would, help you with some kind of better results as well, right? So, what are the challenges and future directions? Right. So, the challenges that I see is that the first thing is patient data is private, right? So, you need to kind of make sure that you have good protection over all of these medical data sets, right? And you also have some kind of regulatory compliance, right? Different parts of the world have has the governments have different regulatory rules and compliances, so you need to follow that, right? The third thing is also interpretability and explainability, right? So you can't just rely on a model and say that, hey, the output that it gives is actually the disease that the person has, right? So it needs to be explainable, right? The result needs to be explainable, and the result also needs to be interpretable, right? So that is another challenge, right? And the fourth thing is the integration with clinical workflow, right? So big medical institutes and hospitals, they already have preset clinical workflows, right? So how would you integrate your model or this computer vision component or this deep learning component in their specific workflow, right? Trying to do that and trying to train the people to help them learn how to use this, and all of that is a problem by itself, right? And the last thing over here is that future directions, right? So I also see a lot of institutes working on explainable AI, specifically with VLMs or vision language models. So these are models which could see the image and also give some kind of textual description, right? So this can specifically be used for explainability, right? The second thing, sorry, over here is federated learning, right? So federated learning means that you have your data set in-house, which means in your institute itself, you don't share the data set publicly. You just train the model and you just serve the model, right? The data stays where it stays. You don't share the data, right? You just share the model, right? The third thing is multi-model fusion, which means you fuse multiple models, vision and language models to kind of create a robust solution. And the last thing over here is that continual learning and adaptive systems, specifically for COVID-19, right? So COVID kept, evolving, and there were multiple variants of, COVID-19 itself, right? So what if you just trained your model on one variant and it was not able to classify other variants, right? So then that's completely useless. So you need a pipeline that would facilitate continual learning, and also it needs to be adaptive based on different use cases, right? So we'll have a 5-minute Q&A session. I'll be available on chat, so you can ask your questions and I'll reply. But other than that, if you want to connect with me, you can Google my name. It's Pranav Durai. You can connect on LinkedIn, GitHub, or you can have a look at Google Scholar as well. If you're working on interesting projects, we could chat for a while. So that's it. Thank you for this opportunity, Dr. Frezghi, and I think this was great. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Pravin. This is really informative. I learned a lot. Hopefully, you also do. So much, yeah. Thank you. Okay. I think that we'll end here. We are really past our time. I would like to thank you again, Pravin, for this wonderful lecture. I think This is really good information for everybody. So AI is becomes like evolving technology. So probably a lot of you will be interested. So if you have any questions directly to Paravin or me, yeah, send up email. Hopefully we'll be able to answer your questions. Okay, I will stop it here today. Thank you.